right. Well, let's get started, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of the National Dairy Shrine's Young Professionals webinar. So today, our session is focusing on avoiding burnout in a 24-hour industry. And we really think that it's an important and timely conversation in an industry that is ever evolving and changing. My name is Crystal Sinn, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. I grew up in Cleveland, Wisconsin on my family's registered Holstein farm, and I was so lucky to be involved in the dairy community from a young age, participating in dairy judging, Dairy Jeopardy, Dairy Bowl, and showing at the local, state, and national levels. From a young age, I always had a curiosity about food and where the milk was going to go when the milk truck left our farm. And that curiosity led me to the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where I majored in agriculture and food business management. After graduation, I had the distinct honor of serving as Wisconsin's 70th Allison Dairyland, Wisconsin's agriculture ambassador. And after that, my career has really spanned across the country. I moved to Northern California for a bit to work in the retail space on behalf of Sartori Cheese, and then moved back to the Midwest to work on the food service and ingredient side of things, all things cheese related. Today, I work for dairy farmers as a business development manager in the food service division, meaning that I have the honor of working with fast food companies to convince them to encourage to incorporate more dairy and dairy solutions into their menu. I live in Sherburne, Minnesota with my husband Ian and our toddler Marvin. And together we own and operate the Sinn Family Celebration of Life Center, a funeral home and event center here in our state. I also, in my free time, love showing cows, judging numerous shows across the country, and spending as much time outdoors as possible. And luckily, here in southern Minnesota, the snow has cleared up. I'm not a big fan of the snow, so getting a little bit more time outside. Today, we are joined by two fantastic panelists who bring a really unique perspective from across the dairy community. So, Dr. Holschbach, I would like you to first introduce yourself for our group today.
Thanks, Crystal. As Crystal said, my name is Chelsea Holschbach. I'm originally from Baraboo, Wisconsin. I grew up on my family's registered Holstein farm, Heatherstone Enterprises. I majored in dairy science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and was very fortunate to be a member of the 2010 National Championship judging team. I had aspirations early on to be a large animal veterinarian, so I attended veterinary school at UW-Madison as well, graduating in 2014. Following my vet training program, I also had some higher aspirations of specializing in large animal internal medicine, so I needed to do some postgraduate additional training. So my first year out of vet school, I moved to Fort Collins, Colorado, where I was a food animal medicine and surgery intern at Colorado State. I then returned to Madison in 2015 for a large animal internal medicine residency and a master's in dairy science. The running joke is that I've been paying for parking ever since, and my role now is as an assistant professor for large animal medicine and food animal production medicine teams. And so in that role, I provide clinical service in the large animal hospital while also training veterinary students throughout their fourth year program.
Well, we are so excited to have you, Chelsea. And then Brett, I'm going to hand it off to you if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I feel like we didn't get a very diverse group. I'm just realizing now everyone's born and raised in Wisconsin, like me, same boat. Yeah, I went to school in New York. I moved out here when I graduated, and I managed a dairy farm from 2006 to 2021. I worked for one family, and then 2022, I joined the family I work for now. It's California Dairy Farms, and I stay busy. We have a handful of dairy farms throughout the valley here in California, and I take care of a lot of cows and a lot of people. And then we also have some new cool stuff going on with digesters and solar energy. So lots of fun stuff going on, and that's me.
Very cool. Well, again, thank you all for being here today. And before we dive into questions, just want to share a reminder that the panelists or everyone who's listening here today can certainly is open to listening to other questions as well. So if there's any questions that pop up, please put that in the chat as we'd love to hear from you as well. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So let's start with a big picture question. Dairy is often described as a 24/7, 365-day industry. What does burnout look like in dairy? And how can young professionals recognize early warning signs before it becomes too overwhelming?
I can get that discussion started. So, from a veterinary medicine perspective, and again, I'm working as an academic veterinarian, so I will say that there's definitely differences probably in my job versus private practitioners or ambulatory vets. So I just want to preface it by saying I don't want to generalize for everyone, but probably most people are aware that veterinary medicine. Veterinarians have one of the highest rates of suicide in professional people, and so it is something that we gets brought up and talked a lot in our veterinary community, both where I work and at many of the conferences and things that we go to as veterinarians. It is emphasized a lot about how we can avoid, promote our mental health and avoid burnout. But that I would say probably is easier said than done. And I think from a large animal vet point of view, we push through a lot. We know that farmers' livelihood really relies on our services and our being able to care for animals. We took the oath and we vowed to protect animals and welfare and relieve animal suffering. So I think it's very hard to kind of sometimes separate where your work day ends and where your, personal life begins. I think also just with my background, I mean, I understand that dairying is a 24/7 job, but I also know that it's not probably sustainable for our long-term well-being. So I think the way that we unfortunately in veterinary medicine see people kind of burn out, they may leave large animal practice and go to either small animal practice or leave to go to industry positions, or leave the profession altogether, which is a lot, saying that with the amount of schooling and the amount of debt that we go into after graduating, that's a pretty profound statement. I would say that people are leaving the profession very early on, probably in their first 5 to 10 years out of vet school, actually, due to burnout.
Thank you for that,
Yeah, I would.
Chelsea.
I'm probably going to echo a lot of the things that she said. That this is a kind of a 24/7 industry, and your heart, you go into it because you enjoy this type of work, and you put kind of everything you have into it. And I oftentimes I see people who struggle with their personal relationships, and I you certainly don't want to see that. And I see people that I've worked with before that are right out of college, and they'll put in so much time, and then once they start hitting their max limit, what will happen is their attitude at work will change. That like it's not the same person that I started with, who I'm working with right now. Their attitude will change. They're not as positive about things, and they'll leave work with half completed jobs. It's not because they didn't put in a full 10-hour day or 12-hour day or whatever. They put in 10 hours, and then they'll start a project and then just leave a project that probably shouldn't be left the way it was. So yeah, I see people hitting a wall, and then it affects them emotionally here at work. And yeah, that's kind of how I see things unrolling here. It affects them at work, and then in turn, it also goes home, and I know it affects their personal life as well.
Great. And that really leads us to the next question I wanted to ask you guys. So, how do you balance the constant demands of your position with personal well-being, like you said, relationships, even Brett, and time away from the farm or job. So how do you find that balance?
Uh, you just have to prioritize what's important to you. I mean, because what's important to me maybe isn't necessarily important to you or to whoever else. So what's that time frame that you should spend at work? What's a reasonable amount of time that you spend at work? Um, an 8-hour day is the minimum that kind of anyone should put in any industry. And if you're putting in more than 10 or 12 hours a day, if you're putting in probably more than 12 hours a day, I understand that you are passionate about your job and you love it, but at some point that's going to affect you mentally, mentally, emotionally, physically, everything. Like you get burnt out. I see my friends who uh, were healthy in college and high school who are in the same industry as me, and then they just like, oh, I'm putting in 14-hour days and eating quick trip food and drinking Mountain Dew. And it's just like, you are not taking care of yourself. Stop smoking and like spend time with your family. You need to. For me, it's probably like 10. Once I get beyond a 10 or 12-hour day, I really start to decline, and like I maybe not as happy as at work, and I'm not as productive. So I make myself, when possible, shut down and go home, go do things with my family or my friends, and then the other thing is I force myself to work out. Yes, agriculture specifically, vets and dairy. You think, oh, I'm on my feet all day, I'm outside. You're working, but you're not necessarily getting a healthy amount of exercise. So I make that point part of my routine, that I make sure I do something to stay physically active, and yeah, that helps me out.
No, I think that's so interesting. And thank you for sharing about your routine too, because, in a 24/7 industry, when you do have those exhausting days, it can be really hard to not, take the easy way out of, sitting back and enjoying your time, but maybe not fueling in the best way. So thank you for sharing a little bit more about your routine, Brett. Um, Chelsea, I'd love to hear from you too of how you also manage balance in your life as well.
Yeah, so I think work-life balance is something that gets thrown around all the time, is something that they want young faculty to really um, try to meet that balance. And I think it's very difficult. And I guess I would struggle with ever saying that I probably have a good work-life balance, because I think of it more as I may be working in a different way, but doing things that I enjoy. So yes, like my work is somewhat my life, but I enjoy what I do and the people that I work with. And so in that regard, like some of my coworkers are some of my best friends. And so um, sometimes I don't always feel as though I'm working per se, although I am, because I'm surrounded by people that make my day very enjoyable. And I think also the fact that my job is a bit unique, that I have a lot of variety. No 2 days are the same. So I'm on the clinic floor maybe 1 to 2 weeks a month. And then those weeks that I'm not on clinics, I'm spent teaching, designing lectures, doing paperwork, outreach, research, those types of things. So I think the job diversity keeps me probably more grounded versus thinking of it as separate work life, and obviously still having my roots in agriculture and dairy farming. My free time is spent home farming, which again is another job for most people, but I think it's the fact that I enjoy that aspect doesn't make it seem like work. So that would be my perspective.
Chelsea, a follow-up. You brought up a really interesting point that a lot of your coworkers are some of your best friends. How do you, like in like having dinner or, hanging out with your coworkers outside of work, how do you manage that balance internally too? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So it's kind of good timing. So Tuesday nights we go out for trivia at a local bar, and it's usually a couple of my colleagues and then some of the veterinary nursing staff there, and it's nice because we always start the evening by having some banter about what's happened at work and blow off a little steam, but then we all kind of understand like we don't want to bring our work to our social life. So it's kind of like, okay, we all a little bit understand that, okay, the rest of the night we're gonna try to, do our best and we can joke around and have a good time without kind of talking about work or knowing that, yes, we're going to be back to work tomorrow morning. So I think that kind of we all feel that same relief by all being together, but still knowing that we don't have to talk about work all the time.
Right. No,
Crystal,
thank you for
they
sharing
do
that.
tequila shots. That's how they separate things. That's
I love it. I love it.
you asked an interesting question about that. So I am I enjoy everyone that I work with. I try to find commonalities with people that I work with. And one thing to kind of piggyback off of your statement and what Chelsea said as well. There are people at work that I would absolutely be friends with outside of work. For me, I kind of have this separation between the two where it's like there are people that I would love to joke with and I would love to tell stories to at work. I supervise, a team of people. So there are people that I would love to connect with, but I keep them kind of completely separate from my friends and my family. And I feel like that's helped me successfully in my work-life balance. It's like I don't necessarily have work stuff that spills over from my friends. I've heard this before. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like you go to work to bitch about your spouse and family, and you go, vice versa. You go home to bitch about work. So I try to keep those two separate. It works for me, maybe not for everyone. Anyways, that's that.
No, both interesting perspectives too. And, friendships outside and inside our careers are definitely hard to manage especially as we get older too. So great discussion, from both sides of the fence. So I've heard from a lot of young professionals that the advice that they're given early in their career is to grind it out, make sure that you're staying late, showing up, for those late hours. But that also can really lead to burnout too. So I'm interested to hear from both of you of what you would do to try to help change that mindset, especially with people so early in their careers so that they don't experience burnout later.
I'd say if you're showing up, if your goal is to be successful at work or super successful, to me, what's more important, it's not about the time that you're at work, it's about the quality when you're there. So when you're at work, you do a good job. You put in, if it's an 8-hour day, you put in a solid 8-hour day. If it's a 10-hour day, you put in a solid 10-hour day. When you say you're going to do something, follow through, follow up with people, be supportive. Putting in a 14-hour day every day, or even 12 hours, putting in 12 and 14-hour days every day on I understand on a small farm where it's only one or two people. That's a different context. I can speak to what I can speak about, and that is managing a team of people, whether it's 5 people or 15 people or 50 people or whatever it is. The amount that you put in maybe isn't as valuable as the quality of work you do. So if you're trying to focus on something, grinding out those hours is yes, you need to put in the time. 10-hour days, yes, show up, be there. But what's going to be more impactful is doing the right job, being supportive, following through with your commitments, doing a good job. That's far more impactful than putting in 14 hours of unproductive work.
Chelsea, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear from you on this as well.
For sure. So I think, again, my career trajectory, I mean, definitely while I was doing my graduate training and my residency, like there is no other way than to grind it out. I mean, you have to, you're on call, you're 24/7 emergency care, doctor. And so you do have to be there but that's also understanding what you're getting into, right? So it was no surprise to me that that was the expectation of what I was going into. And so I think one thing that I try to talk about with our students that are graduating and when they're finding, their first job out of vet school, it's making them understand the reality of, what the career is. Unfortunately, a lot of times, they can overlook during vet school and being so driven by having to do tests and read this and do that assignment that they lose sight of the big picture and the hours and the commitment to the animals that, is necessary. So things that I really push students to assess when they're looking for jobs is to find overall kind of the happiness of the employees who work there, retention rates on the vets that are in the clinic, and also assessing what type of mentorship is at the practice. And so I think mentorship is a huge thing, and being surrounded with people that are supportive and willing to kind of ease new graduates into the profession and not just, throw them in the truck on day one and think that they're going to go out and be successful and be happy, right? So I think finding a good balance of a job, not that it just because it's the job that pays the best, or because it's closest to where you want to live, but really asking those hard questions of, are you going to be happy there? And are you, again, surrounding yourself with people that are happy to do their job?
This transitions really well into the next question that I wanted to ask you both, and that really has to do a lot with culture. So, when new grads are out of school and they are looking for that next step, it's important to assess the culture of that organization. So, Chelsea, you brought up like retention rates and those kinds of things, and I'd be interested to know if there's other parameters or maybe even an example that you can share of a success or on the other side of the fence, understanding when it might not be the best fit for that person. And then Brett would also be interested to hear your take as well.
Yeah, I think from something that we, again, knowing one of the critical things that is probably why we lose people in the profession early on is because of, they're wanting to have families and things like maternity and paternity leave, I guess I could use as an example. That, as part of my job, I work with a lot of practices around the Midwest at placing vet students for some ambulatory rotations. And so I use that time to meet with clinics and ask kind of these questions yearly when I do my clinic visits is, what have you seen change as far as how do you keep your employees happy? What are trends in the industry as far as, things like maternity and paternity leave? And it's very interesting to compare, 10 or 15 years ago, when, people didn't get maternity or paternity leave as veterinarians. And now today, it's very commonplace to get, 6 to 12 weeks of paid maternity leave in depending on, again, the clinic that you may be at. So I think it's a positive thing to show that the industry is trying to make a better attempt at allowing professionals to do their job, but also have a family life. Because I think what we found is that is one of the number one reasons why people leave the profession, right? So I think employers and clinic owners are putting a bigger emphasis on wanting to really make sure that their hires and the people that they hire are happy.
I'm going to jump on what Chelsea had said earlier about when you join a new team to look at are you going to be happy there? Because oftentimes, if you offer to grind it out for 14 hours a day, some businesses will take every bit of that. I'm not too far away from Silicon Valley, and those like if you're in a startup company, an IT startup company, you think dairy farmers are on call 24/7. Those guys are on call 24/7 answering emails, and they're expected to answer emails, and they burn through so many people out there, so many people. Tesla goes through a lot of high powered people, super smart, but they just get grinded out, and we see the same thing here. I know people, there were guys that I went to college with who would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and they'd be at work at 4:30 and they'd be there till 6:30, 6 days a week because they were doing it and their employer kind of asked them to do it. And yeah, they got paid a lot, but it took a toll. And they are no longer with that. I can think of a handful of people that kind of happened to where it affected their personal life, where they were just working and working and working, and they got divorced, left their job or left the state. So I think you need to think what is going to make you happy, and think of the people, the company that you're going to work for. Are they going to offer you the support? Like Chelsea had said, the practices that people are going into, what kind of support do the owners of the vet clinic, what do they provide? Same thing with dairy farms. Are they going to support you, and not grinding it out all day every day? What are their expectations of you at work?
Right. Now you both bring up such a valuable point of, you know, let's be honest, in the dairy industry, it is a very, very demanding role, especially, if you're a vet or if you're dairy farmer, and lots of in between too. Like, I can think of the many people that I know who are on call a lot, right? But it's also understanding what is sustainable and what is not. So, of course, we're going to put in crazy hours here and there, but if it's constant and it's, weighing on your relationships, your family, your mood, that is certainly something to take into consideration, because we can all do hard work, but we can't do it all the time. And we need to make sure that we create that space to really take a step back as well. So I'm loving this discussion so far. That leads me to my next question. What advice would you give to young professionals who feel that guilt when they have to say no, to step away, or even saying no to an industry where animals and people depend on them every day? How do you manage guilt, or how do you manage guilt within the people that you mentor as well?
That's a
Yeah,
big question.
yeah.
That's
Go
a big
ahead.
question
Go
because I
ahead,
don't know
Brett.
that I've ever seen anywhere on any of my job description managing guilt of employees. Uh, I want the people that I work with, I want them to give 100%, to do a good job, to care about what they do, and yeah, and show up and be there, be present. And I also want to support them. I've told multiple people this. I want you to be happy at work. Number one, I need you to be successful for us, for the cows, for our team, for our company. I need you to be successful. I need someone in this spot to be successful. On the same token, I want you to be happy when you're at work. I want to work with people who want to be happy. And I will support that. I will support that. I'm not expecting people to be here 7 days a week. I'm not expecting people to answer every one of my calls or text messages by any means. I want you to have time off. I want you to be happy when you're at work, because that's how you're going to stay on the team with me. Otherwise, you're burned out. You're going to go somewhere else. How do I manage the guilt? I don't know how to be a good person, care for the team members who work for you. And that's what I try to do is I want people to be happy at work. So how can I facilitate being happy, number one, and number two, also, we still need you to do your job, and be successful at work. So that's how I manage it.
For me, this is definitely something I struggle with still, 12 years into the profession. It's very difficult for me to say no and set boundaries of, being on the clock versus off the clock. I feel like that's something that's very hard for me. But I've made some attempts, and I think you also have to realize that you can't please everybody. So no matter what you do, there's going to be about 20% of people that are still going to find an issue or complain. And so all you can do is do the best you can. And I think, again, having a supportive team of people you work with, one thing I really try to um, emphasize is that the team of veterinarians that I work with at the vet school, they can do, they can provide the same level of care to this animal as I could. So even though I'm not the doctor that's on call, this weekend, you can feel confident that your animal is going to get the same level of care whether I'm there or not. So kind of setting that expectation with clients that, I need my time away too, and I'll help you if I can, but please try to go through the right channels. I would say if my teammates at work, if they feel that there's really something that they need and a question to ask me, then I have no problem, answering my phone to try to help a colleague out. But I'd like it to come through that channel versus, sometimes people just, reaching out directly. And then I feel, yeah, I don't just not respond to a text message or a phone call, right? So that's where I think kind of trying to set some boundaries with clients to let them know that, the only way we can ever really rest and have, some free time is to not be constantly tied to our phones.
Yeah,
Crystal, I
technology
didn't
is
answer your Crystal, I
no, that's
didn't answer
okay.
your question maybe correctly. I was thinking I was answering for employees. How do I manage saying no for myself? Um, yes, again, I'm gonna echo a little bit what Chelsea said. It's hard to turn your phone off. I do always try to respond back to everyone, but just um, in a political answer, I always try to answer people, but I might not give them the full answer that they need. I'll say, hey, let me get back to you Monday morning or whatever it is. Yeah, let me get back to you Monday morning. But I do think it's important to be able to check out for a day or 2 days or kind of whatever your personal needs are. But I do definitely think that's important. And I'm just creative about how I say no.
Great answer. Great answer. And I think too, like you both brought up cell phones, and in a digital world where we are accessible 24/7, can be really demanding. And it's been personally hard for me, even on weekends when I'm trying to spend time with my family, if I've been traveling a lot for the week, and to get work questions or other, volunteer questions over the weekends too, when I'm trying to be really intentional about taking that time off, has been hard because, it does feel in a sense rude or inconsiderate to not answer that text or not answer that phone call. But certainly trying to manage expectations is something that I'm still struggling with and always looking for the right tip, but certainly something that we are all seeing on all fronts regardless of what industry you work in. So, this has been an amazing discussion so far. We're now going to transition to individual questions for our panelists. And this is just a friendly reminder to still put those questions in the chat so we can ask our panelists towards the end of our webinar. So, we have a couple of questions here so far. So, I just encourage you to continue to put those in. All right, so Brett, we are going to start with you. As a general manager overseeing people and operations, how do you watch for burnout among employees and managers? So, what are the telltale signs that you're seeing burnout, and what steps specifically in leadership do you take to prevent it before productivity starts to suffer?
We touched on this a little bit earlier, and that is I see uh, people's attitudes change, and I also see, yeah, their attitudes, just how they interact with other employees or other teammates, that changes. And the other thing is the quality of work changes as well. They might be putting in a lot of hours. Um, they might be putting in a lot of hours, but it's not maybe productive hours. And so the follow up is like, how would I address that? I mean, it's person by person. I think the golden rule is treat everyone the way you want to be treated, and then there's like the extra golden rule: treat people how they want to be treated. It's a little bit different, but in our I guess maybe once you climb a little bit higher on the employee management um, ladder, you maybe need to understand people and be able to manage people the way that they need to be managed. So I just think of, if, for example, if someone wants time off, it's, in our industry, it's like, I just need a couple more days from you. Can that vacation just be 1 or 2 days shorter? And like, okay, how about you don't take all Christmas off, just take the morning and come in the afternoon. So I try to, when people ask for time off, I'm super lucky right now. The whole management team that I work with, they enjoy work, and they're successful, and they show up and they do their job. But I want to continue to promote that. So when they ask for time off, I do my best to give them time off. Or if they need to leave early, yep, go early. Hey, make sure you leave your phone available for whoever's your next in command. Make sure that that's available. So that's how I try to prevent burnout, is just not ask for too much and support them when they need time off.
Right. And establishing those boundaries sounds like it's very important for you, Brett. So, Chelsea, we've also kind of talked a lot about how in the veterinary field, there is, it's hard to manage that work-life balance. So, one question that I have is there's obviously a lot of mentors that you've had in your profession. What is some of the advice that they've shared with you that has really resonated with your career?
Good question. So I think maybe a blessing or a curse is that a lot of my mentors are very similar to me is from a work ethic standpoint. And so I don't know that, I've seen them kind of do it all. And so it makes me feel like I should kind of do the same, right? So be there and always be available to consult or look at an animal. And I think I have, more recently, I'd say just kind of heeding the advice that it is okay to turn off your phone. Like you don't, if you are not on call, if you sometimes you have to be that forward about it is just simply turning your phone off because you're not going to be able, like we've all said that with the times of where we're at with technology, it's very hard to get away from being reached. And so some of those things of it's okay, and just hearing from people that are more senior in the profession that it's okay to turn your phone off, it's okay not to respond. Nobody's gonna, people that care about you shouldn't worry about how they feel if you don't get back to them right away. Now, not that I'm never going to respond, but like also kind of prioritizing, is it truly something that needs to be answered this moment? Is it something that can be handled on Monday when you're back to work? And so I think those are maybe some of the things that I've taken to heart more recently to try to be able to separate myself a little bit from the job.
And as a follow-up, Chelsea, I'm so curious to know, obviously you have clients that are friends too. So they have access to your personal cell phone and they know you on a personal level.
Mhm.
And in, that high stress environment when a cow is really sick and it's under your care, your team's care, having that direct line of contact to you must be stressful in certain times, especially if you're trying to take a step away. Do you have any guidelines on how you navigate those situations?
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head there, and I'd be lying if I said that I'm good at separating that. I'm not. It's always an honor to be, contacted by these, people and friends with, the whole reason I'm in this profession is because I love the dairy cow and I love my job, and so I enjoy being, part of the workup and the management and the care for some of these elite, cows or calves. And so I think if it's still in a way that I can help and still while I'm enjoying what I'm doing, I think at this point in my life, like I'm still gonna probably show up and help a friend out. I'm not gonna just say, no, I'm not going to respond or I'm not going to answer my phone. But I would say that my close friends are very aware and they're very, I would say, conscientious about, okay, is this a problem that we need to call Chelsea about on a Friday night, on a Sunday morning, or is this something that I can send her a text and say, hey, when you have time, can you give me a call? So I think there's some ways and that we try to navigate that with some of my friends within the industry, but at the end of the day, I want to help and I want to do what I can in those situations. And so, whether it's for the good or bad or work life, whatever you want to call it, I'm still gonna be there when I can.
I want to jump on one thing that Chelsea said, which is something that I do as well. And that is she will respond back by via text and say, yeah, let me, like, let me get back to you. I'll help you. Just I'll get back to you when I can. Right. So you follow back up with them. They know that you'll support them, but just give me time to do it.
Yeah, setting that time frame is really important too, especially when different people have different levels of urgency. So that is certainly something that I'm sure that both of you have to navigate probably daily. One more question, and I think this would be really interesting to hear from the both of you, would be who has been a really great mentor in your life that when things get tough or you're having a struggle with whether that's work or something that has, manifested at work that's now affecting your personal life, who is someone that you can turn to in that time of need? And if there's any advice that they've shared that has been really instrumental.
Uh, I've got a handful of really good friends and family, and so I would not want to just limit it to one person. I had my old office manager. She was a trained marriage and family therapist, and she just happened to work in the office with us. And so, like, I got mental therapy every single day from her. She was therapizing me, and I didn't even know it. So she was super helpful to run things through. But yeah, I'm just fortunate to be surrounded by people who care about me, and I can't kind of pinpoint it to one person.
Yeah, I would agree with Brett. I think probably to me, I turn to my family more than anything, and I think it's good to also like consult with people that actually aren't in the profession. So obviously they're dairy farmers and they understand to a significant degree what I'm dealing with on a daily basis, but uh, it's nice to see it in a kind of an outsider's perspective and have somebody kind of say, okay, well, again, I don't know all the details of everything you're going through, but also to maybe put it a little bit more in perspective for me and say, okay, like calm down, take a day, like um, don't, go to any rash decision or anything, like being able to help me think through problem solve, I think probably is come from a lot of people, not only that I work with, but also family and friends that are not in the dairy industry or in veterinary medicine.
Absolutely. And I think too, another point that to bring up is having someone that you can also just vent to without necessarily getting any advice back. I know that personally, that's really important to me is I will set that guideline of, hey, I need to vent. I'm not looking for feedback. I just really need to get this off my chest. And having people in your corner who you feel comfortable enough sharing those details in your life, I think is really, really important. So again, thank you guys so much for sharing those details. We are now going to move into some of the questions from our audience. So the first one that we have is anonymous. So for those of us working 10+ hour days, 5 days a week, what advice do you have for starting a constructive conversation with our manager about workload and compensation, especially when we're salaried and not receiving overtime pay? Wow, what an amazing question.
Uh, Yes, that's a good question. I think you should start off. What does your initial policy or contract outline? What are your work expectations? What's your job description? That's uh, been a big thing with the new family I work for. Um, they've tried to outline that with expectations. You have a piece of paper that shows this is what your job descriptions are. Um, and if you weren't told from the beginning, hey, we expect you, we're looking for 10 hours a day, and this is what we want you to do, then that's what are the expectations? What are the expectations and what are outlined in the policies and the when you signed on to that team? So if you signed up for a 40-hour work week and you're working 10 hours, you'd be working 50 hours. Let's revisit. Hey, I'd like to revisit my uh, job description because I'm putting in more hours, which I don't mind doing. I enjoy what I do, but I'd like to discuss, I'm sacrificing family time to spend time at work. Again, I don't mind doing this, but what I what the job description that you all asked me for was for a 40-hour work week, and now I'm putting in 50 and beyond, and I'm also taking phone calls outside of work. Let's review what my job description is, so that way we're both aware. You know what you're paying me for, and I know what to expect, what you're asking for.
Absolutely. It sounds like just having those clear guidelines and also taking the initiative that if you don't have that regular cadence with your manager or your boss at that time to review and check in to see how you're doing, how's the workload, to maybe take that upon yourself and to start, asking for some kind of cadence because checkpoints are important to making sure that everyone is on the same page as well. Chelsea, any notes from you on this?
Not really, given again, I'm in a different kind of situation than being a university employee, so I don't really have a lot of
Right.
like I'm not going to get far a lot with negotiations per se, but I do think the main, I think, really good point brought up is that it's very important to have yearly reviews or semi-annual reviews with your employer and make sure that you're able to kind of bring up and state those exact things. This is what my contract says I'm supposed to do. Here's proof that I've done 10 times this much teaching or I've gotten pulled in this direction even though that's not part of my contract and making having evidence, written evidence, and we do some faculty annual reports and things like that really do demonstrate what your productivity is. And so that stuff's pretty hard to deny when you are talking to administrators that, okay, this is what I'm doing. And if there is opportunity for a bonus or for salary raise, like those are the times that it would be the most appropriate.
Absolutely. And I think too, Chelsea brought up a good point about documentation. Personally, in my inbox, I have a folder of, things that I email to myself when either I've gone above and beyond, or I might see a coworker struggling with a task that I would like to help in, but I don't know necessarily the right steps. Those little reminders of keeping ourselves accountable, but then at the same point, when you do have that cadence, you can bring up that proof of, hey, I did work these extra hours here in this month. And, again, we are so, if you're going to be in the dairy industry, you're going to be a hard worker, right? But also making sure that you're still having that work-life balance and making it very clear to your manager or your boss about where you might be struggling or just wanted to be accounted for those hours is certainly very, very important. So, and another thing I think too for young professionals is to be okay with negotiation. And negotiation doesn't have to always be at the upfront of, when you sign on. It can be when you have that established relationship with your manager, to talk about those things that might be bothering you because, a lot of people are not mind readers. And if you don't bring it up, you might just have that resentment for a long time. So, Brett and Chelsea, I think these are really good points that you both brought up. Uh, Switching gears here a little bit, what gives you hope about the future, specifically whether it's in work-life balance or as young professionals enter the career that you are both in? What gives you guys hope for the future for these young professionals?
I can start. So I guess I think one of the parts of my job and probably one of the main reasons I do what I do is because I do love teaching and I love seeing students develop from the first year veterinary student that doesn't know how to put a rope halter on a cow or take a heart rate to being some of the people that in 10 years from now are going to be some of the leading people in the industry. And so seeing that transformation, I think, throughout the veterinary program and then also staying in touch with a lot of the graduates that are out in practice, that probably brings me one of the most joy and kind of also keeps me like positive that what I do makes a difference. And so even though there's a lot of hard days, like seeing the positive impact that you can have on somebody, and how them again, they step out into the profession and then they start mentoring, students that were in their shoes. So kind of that revolving door of we're all trying to help each other out, mentor each other, and support each other through the profession.
Um, I'm excited. I I want to surround myself with people that want to be in a similar industry and want to be successful as well. I want people who want to be at work, who love agriculture, who love um, supporting their community, supporting their employees, other employees, supporting their family. Um, I know that there's people out there, and we have an industry that absolutely can do that. Dairy farming, agriculture in general is going to be here. It's going to be here in America. We got the best country to do this in, and I'm encouraged. I get excited to work with people who have the same passion level, and I know that agriculture can supply can make a good livelihood to young people who want to get into this. You can be super successful, and you can have a work-life balance. Not to be honest, not everyone wants to be successful in work. They want to spend the time at home and be with the family. And that's awesome. Good for you. And you also have people like, well, I maybe want to be super successful in work and I don't maybe need to spend much time at home, and that's their prerogative and whatnot. But for me, I know that agriculture, dairy farming can do any of those things. It can make you happy working an 8-hour day and going home, or if you want to grind it out and put in a lot of hours and also spend time with your family, it can do that too. It's like I'm the beholder of how my destiny goes. So um, I'm hopeful, and I want to surround myself with people that want to do the same thing, and they're out there, and so that is one of the things that keeps me going.
No, I love that. And I think such a great way to end too, because our dairy industry is all encompassing and there is room for everyone and anyone within our community. And finding those right people, the right opportunities, etc., is so, so important. And surrounding yourself with those right people is really what's going to determine your success as well. So before we wrap up, Brett, Chelsea, any other final comments that you'd like to share? Again, this has just been an amazing discussion so far. So I know we've covered a lot, but anything that you would like to share before we head out today?
One thing I thought of earlier during the presentation, I didn't think it was appropriate to say it, but I people do need to take time to step away. If you I like work. So I put in lots of hours and I enjoy what I do. And I could probably do it every single day. My parents did it every single day, 306, much like everyone else on this call. Your parents never took a day off and they were proud of it for 40 years for showing up and milking cows or whatever they did. But I could probably be pretty close to that. I love work. I love grinding it out. But I will say this, taking a little bit of personal time, go for runs, go for walks, go to the gym, spending a little bit of time unplugged from work, from your phone, yes, your phone, spending a couple hours unplugged from all of that stuff definitely gives you perspective. If you can get a day away, like even once every 2 weeks, if you can get a day away a week, where you just completely checked away, it gives you fresh perspective coming back to work. If I'm gone for 2 days from work and like I'm kind of completely removed, I'm chomping at the bit to get back to work. I'm like, what's going on? What's the juicy gossip? I want to be back at work and like know what's going on. So that if you can find the time to separate, it gives you, for me, maybe not for everyone, but for me, it gives me an exciting like perspective when I come back in.
I love that perspective. Chelsea, any final comments from you?
No, just thank you for having us and putting on this discussion. I think it's, like you said at the beginning, very, very important to talk about and bring up, and don't feel, that we can't talk about mental health and well-being. And that, again, at the end of the day, I think everybody here knows that the value of being kind and supporting each other, no matter what facet of the industry you're in, you're just going to be surrounded by good people that want to see you happy and be successful.
Wow, couldn't agree more. That makes us pretty much close to the end of the hour. So again, thank you to our amazing panelists, Dr. Chelsea Holschbach and Brett, for sharing their experiences and insights. So if you would like to stay in touch with our panelists and ask any follow-up questions from today's webinar, here are their email addresses on the screen. We will also share out the webinar as a follow-up as well. A huge thank you to the National Dairy Shrine board members and volunteers for hosting this event, and to everyone that has joined us today. And we also want to remind you that to be on the lookout for upcoming webinars and other professional development opportunities through the National Dairy Shrine. The next National Dairy Shrine webinar will take place on Wednesday, May 13th via Zoom from noon to 1 Central Time. And we hope to see you there, and more details will be shared in the coming months. And to stay up to date on upcoming events, make sure to follow National Dairy Shrine on social media through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and monitor your email inboxes to stay engaged with National Dairy Shrine. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and we hope to see you at future National Dairy Shrine Young Professional events. Have a great rest of your day.